Hello, everyone. I am Chris, and I am here to give my review on Tar, which is the psychological drama film written and directed by Todd Field. This has been nominated for 6 Academy Awards this year at the 95th Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Film Editing, Best Actress, Best Cinematography, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay. So, strong contender this year, especially with 6 nominations. And having seen the movie, I'm very much excited to see how this does at this Academy Awards. Granted, I haven't seen all of the films yet, and I am playing catch up. The day of the Oscars for us in the UK is going to be the early hours of the morning on March the 13th, I believe. And I'll have times and everything as to when I'm going live for those, because I always do a live stream during the Oscars where we see all the nominations come in and all the winners, obviously. So for more information on that, do follow me on Twitter. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor, and I'll post the times closer to the time when I actually know what's happening. And we're almost in March, actually, just a little under 2 weeks almost, and I still have a lot of movies to watch. So please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. I should get them all done. I'm confident I will. But more importantly, let me know your thoughts on Tar if you've seen the film. I actually don't know how long this film's been out. I think I've jumped on it pretty quickly. But if you have seen it or planning on seeing it, let me know your thoughts on it and if you're excited for this film. There is a lot to unpack with this film. First and foremost, this film is completely unlike anything I thought it was going to be. More importantly, just focusing on the Best Original Screenplay category. For the longest time, up until a couple of days ago, almost embarrassingly so, because I completely forgot it was nominated for that category, I thought this was a biopic. I thought this was based off a real composer. I thought these were true events. So imagine my surprise a couple of days ago when I realized that it's an original film, but I think it's intentionally made to be that way. The title itself is very striking, just a surname of someone. You expect that to be a title of a proper biopic film, and how the film's structured, how it flows, it does very much feel like one. And I think that was intentional, even from like the opening scene of the film. Cate Blanchett's character, obviously Lydia Tarr, she's the first chief conductor at the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, and she's seated at an interview on stage, and who's kind of going through all of her exploits and all the music she's written and all the people she's worked with. And it does feel very grounded. It does feel very real, like it immediately throws you into that world. Obviously, I'm incredibly passionate about music, so one thing I was really looking forward to this film was the fact that it was completely centered around music. In the orchestra pit, the terminology that's being thrown around, and granted, there's still some terminology that still eludes me, but I'm always fascinated by this kind of stuff, especially classical music. It's one of the things that I'm most passionate about, on top of, 80s rock and metal. But I do love this stuff, so whenever a music related movie comes out in whatever respect, I always look forward to it. So knowing Cate Blanchett was in this and it was based on a conductor, I was really looking forward to this one. This film was unlike anything I thought it was going to be. So immediately when I saw the description for this film that it was a psychological drama, and as I'm watching the film and seeing events unfold, I don't know how much I want to spoil of the film. I probably will get into spoilers later on. Usually I don't have a plan when it comes to these reviews on the channel. I hit live and I go for it. But I have actually written a little bullet pointed plan, a little bit of some areas that I want to talk about. And on the drive home, I was mulling a lot of things over in my head, because this is a very complex film. And I can almost guarantee that there are going to be so many videos out there that deconstruct this, that analyze it, all of the themes within it, all of the little visual signifiers. There's going to be hundreds of things that I've missed. This feels like a very deliberate film by Todd Field. Actually, Todd Field, a director that I'm not familiar with, and it looks like he's had a leave of absence for quite a while. His last film was a film in 2006 called Little Children. And he just, by the looks of it, I don't think he's directed anything since that point. I haven't read up on as to why he's taken a back seat from directing for a long time, because it's a hell of a time to be away. But and then to come back to directing with this film in particular, why this film? Thought it was a very fascinating choice, really. But masterful direction, because it, written and directed by Todd Field. This is a very strongly written film, and it's very precise with its themes and little bits of information it gives the audience. And I've been trying to mull over some of them and come up maybe with my own interpretations, which any good film should do. But first and foremost, I want to kick off with the star of the show, the one who's nominated for Best Actress, Cate Blanchett. Phenomenal actress. She's always going to be Galadriel to me. But yeah, wow. Just blown away by performance. And I usually am with pretty much everything I see her in. She absolutely disappears into this character. It's a fictional character. And I have to keep reminding myself that this is a fictional character. She's feels so real, in a performance and a delivery, and how intense she is. Some of my favorite characters in films are the ones that are completely enraptured in their art, in their profession, that it's almost consumed them from like an artistic standpoint. And there's a lot of familiarities with this film, actually, especially when it comes to its psychological elements. Actually, there's almost some horror elements to this as well in some places. Very, very tense, suspenseful scenes in this. There's a scene in particular where Cate Blanchett's character Tar follows someone into a building, and then the person's just seemingly disappeared, and it almost looks like a crack den or some kind of like abandoned asylum, almost, how it's decked out, these labyrinthian corridors, and she can hear footsteps, and there's like rabid dogs in there that are chasing her, and it gets pretty scary. It gets pretty intense at some points, and it reminded me of a Darren Aronofsky film in some respects. Probably the closest comparison I can draw to it is Black Swan, the Natalie Portman film from, I want to say, 2008, I think. Similar elements to that, how someone just completely throws themselves into their art, their craft, and starts to come unhinged a little bit, starts to unravel at the seams with a lot of psychological horror elements going on. Now, I think in Black Swan, the horror elements and the fantastical elements are definitely played up to the nth degree when compared to this one. But there were similarities that I noticed there. I don't know if anyone else is talking about those, but that was the first film that really came to mind. And the way that the character's framed definitely throughout a lot of the film. But Cate Blanchett is just amazing. This is probably one of my favorite roles that I've ever seen her in. The character's quite fascinating because the character almost certainly isn't perfect and has a lot of flaws to them, and we'll go into those in a second. But you're still kind of enraptured by a character. You're fascinated by a character. I found that I was hanging on her every word, and she was a character that I was really interested to see where, the events would lead her to, and where she'd end up by the end of the film, and how she'd change as a character. And she does change in some respects. But Blanchett just brings that level of intensity. There's one scene in particular that I think is probably my favorite scene in the film. And it goes on for quite a while, this scene, and it's where she's talking to a lecture hall of would-be conductors, who are training there. And she's asking them what they get from music, and she's throwing composers at them. And I think she mentions Bach. And one of the students says, "Oh, I don't like Bach." She's like, "Why? What about the beautiful melodies in this and the way he frames?" And she's playing stuff on the piano to him. And, he's very much a youth of modern culture, definitely. And he goes like, "Oh, Bach was a cis white male who was a misogynist and did all of this and that. And I don't agree with his music because of the way that the man was." And she basically pulls his argument, down to the seams. Maybe you could side with both of them. Maybe you could see where both of them coming from. But I was almost completely on Cate Blanchett's side on this one, in this argument, on Tar's side, because it's down to the age-old argument of the artist and the art, and can you separate the two? There's a bunch of, musicians out there, actors, directors, in any walk of, artistic merit, where the actual person is an absolute son of a bitch, whether they're a criminal or, you know, whatever they've done, like whatever disgusting atrocity they've done, but yet you can still listen to a song they've made, or you can still watch a performance in a film they've made and go, that is a damn fine performance, or that is a well-written song, it's a beautiful melody, or whatever it happens to be. And I've had this argument with people before, on Facebook, you know, the ones where you're like, you're writing essays back and forth to each other, and you're never going to change each other's opinion. And that's kind of how the scene unravels in this film, is that neither come to an armistice, essentially, with their arguments. It ends with the guy storming out of the room. And despite, I think, Tar having very valid arguments, and there's a beautiful quote, which I'm going to find for when the time's right, for like another live stream or something. But I wish I could have written that quote down that she says. It was, to me, it was just her argument to him. It was just like an absolute slap in the face to him. And to kind of modern culture with that kind of stuff, which I thought was a wonderful argument. But yeah, I've had arguments with people about art versus the artist, and I think it is an interesting debate, and I've never got on my high horse about it. I'm of the firm belief that art should stand separate from the artist. Can things with, you know, what the artists have done, any horrible thing they've done in their life, can that influence the art? I can see it almost tarnishing the legacy of that art a little bit, but I still have the firm belief that that art should stand on its own as a product for us to comment on, and then comment whatever you will on the artist. And that's really the biggest theme of the entire film, is that Tar, from that opening scene of that interview with Tar, pretty much outlines all of the themes within the film from that interview at the beginning. And I'm going to go into some now. So yeah, art versus the artist is a big one, and that unravels not just from that opening scene, but through that scene that I mentioned. I became aware that it almost was an unbroken take. I'm going to have to go back and watch the film, but it seems like, to my knowledge, there were no edits within this scene, and the camera's moving around this big, vast space, just letting these actors just act. And Cate Blanchett's just absolutely tearing the role up, and is fascinating to listen to, and the energy and the physicality she puts into the role. You know, probably trained under actual conductors, and I think she did consult with actual conductors in real life, so that she got the terminology right, and the way that they speak, and the way that they I was going to say the way that they conduct themselves, which is a terrible pun, but I'm going to stick with it. Because yeah, Tar is not necessarily a good human being. She is quite a horrible human being, actually, and as we see throughout the film, incredibly intelligent, but also incredibly manipulative at the same time. The way that she twists, the way that she pulls the strings and plays politics within her line of work and within her role to get what she wants, is fascinating to watch. Because she is a master manipulator, complete narcissist. And there's a moment, for example, where it really shows the side of this lustful emotion that Tar always has to, you know, there's a moment in the film where her with this new cellist that she's kind of pushing to the forefront because she's attracted to her, she's sexually attracted to her, and she's trying to, you know, curry favor with her and make her the new star pupil, essentially. She is kind of the fresh meat, and as the film goes on, you get the impression, well, you don't even get the impression, you almost get specifically told that she's done this many times before. She's been living this life of being very I don't say polyamorous, if you want to say that, but she's very lustful, she's very sexually driven in every sort of interaction that she has with an attractive woman. You can see there's an element there that she's trying to make it into, you know, like a physical relationship or casual relationship, whatever it is. And this kind of ties into the overall theme, because I think it might be Bach they're talking about. It could be Bach, or it could be Mahler. because I know they talk about Mahler and the Fifth Symphony, which is very significant to the film in the intro. But I can't remember if they're talking about Bach and that he had like 20 not 20 no, he had 20 kids, and he put it about a lot, and he was kind of a misogynist, and almost certainly wasn't monogamous, and all of these things. And these could be levied against the actual artist, saying that, oh, he was an absolute son of a bitch. He didn't have any integrity, when it comes to relationships or anything like that. But my God, his music is second to none. And there are a lot of parallels there with Tár's character, in that, she's her wife, who she's got a kid with. She's the first violinist, and through conversations throughout the film, you learn that they kind of helped each other almost get to where they are. She was a first violin, and she was a guest conductor, and through politics throughout the workplace, they probably got each other where they needed to be, and that was very comfortable. And the first violinist was probably incredibly attractive, and again, playing into that lustful side of Tár's character. And then as we go through, she's got her personal assistant, and you can tell that the personal assistant, does have a lot of feelings, romantic feelings, I would say. It's pretty evident for Tár, and Tár's kind of keeping her where she wants her and toying with her emotions a little bit, but is very self-centered, is very selfish. As I guess a lot of artists probably are, the ones that are really consumed by their passion. That is their first love, and that is unbreakable, and everyone else around them is just kind of there. It happens. Then there's the allegations throughout the film, which I actually should say what the plot is. So Cate Blanchett plays Lydia Tár, a renowned conductor who is accused of sexual abuse. And that's really as the film unfolds, and you learn that she had an interaction with a student, probably in a very similar way to all the other women in her life. And, through various email exchanges, she basically blacklisted this upcoming student who showed a lot of promise. And she basically ruined this young woman's musical career and said that she would never work again, basically, which ultimately leads to this young girl committing suicide, which, although Tár puts on this brave front that it hasn't affected her, and she's moving on past it because she's disconnecting from the situation. She doesn't want to admit to herself that she's the one to blame for this horrible thing that's happened. She's very stoic in her emotion. She's very cut off, but through various nightmares, she can't sleep. She suffers from insomnia. She's taking pills to try and calm herself down. And as I mentioned, the film is a psychological thriller, psychological drama film. And the psychological part comes in from Tár's probably, guilt, these demons, these haunting experiences that are kind of pursuing her throughout her life, and that she's trying to get away from. And she's balancing this celebrity persona, and she's controlling her persona, her online presence. She's editing her own Wikipedia page. She's constantly checking what people are saying about it. She's having visions of people whispering behind her back. She's a very paranoid individual through events that she's ultimately brought on through herself. And we see this downfall of this godlike character, really. A conductor very much is almost like a godlike role. You are creating, you're not writing the music yourself, but you are crafting what the audience is going to hear. As she mentions, the exact time. You are controlling time itself. You're in a place of power, and she uses that power to her own lustful endeavors. I think it's interesting as well, I just mentioned there, it's just come to my mind that she's in this powerful position and she is ultimately controlling the music, but she isn't composing anything herself. She isn't producing anything herself. I actually can't remember in the film if they say that she has done before or if she has always been a conductor. Clearly she's musically minded. Christ alive, you'd have to be a conductor. Above anyone else, you are seeing everything. You are this sort of like omniscient, omnipotent entity at the front of the the orchestra pit. But she can't write anything herself. And we see many times throughout the film she sits at the piano She's tinkering with a few notes, and nothing about it sounds spectacular or anything like that. And she'll get easily distracted. She'll hear a sound. It's almost like me with my ADHD. She'll hear a sound and get distracted by it, or she's having these sort of like horrific visions, and you never actually see her compose anything during the entire film. She comes up with a couple of notes, and that's all she can manage. And I think that's quite telling, maybe, that she's not in touch with herself, so therefore can't produce anything. It sounds a bit of a hippy-dippy way of saying things, but clearly with any kind of composition, it is an element of the individual. They are putting an element of themselves, an emotion of themselves, into the music they produce. And she's completely not in touch with herself. She has lost an integral part of her being, which is why she just can't. She's like a shell of a human, essentially. Complete narcissist, and isn't in tune. She believes she is. She isn't in tune with the music. From this interview at the beginning, this is going to take me on to my next point now. The discussion on Mahler's Fifth Symphony and the significance of the number 5. And this only occurred to me on the drive home because I was trying to think about it. And this might go off on like a weird... I feel like I'm in an English literature class right now and I'm just completely bullshitting, but hopefully something sticks with this. The interviewer asks her at the beginning how she interprets the music, because as your role as a composer, as a conductor, is to interpret the music. And those emotions, and reading those dynamics and those articulations within the music, and really directing those out of the players to get the sound that you want. And she mentions that her next piece that she's going to be conducting is Mahler's Fifth Symphony. And it was really difficult to get in the headspace, because I believe that she says the music to her for a long time of this particular piece, the meaning behind it was a complete mystery to her. She eventually says that she settles on the theme. She believed that the piece was about love, and it was about Mahler's new marriage, and this overwhelming sense of love and, unconditional love and everything like that for his new wife. And there's moments where the number 5 is very significant. Probably the most notable place is where she loses the manuscript. She loses her orchestra notes that she's written, and she's got like almost compendiums, like an Encyclopedia Britannica kind of thing. It's like, labeled on the bookshelf, volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4. There's a gap, and then volume 6 onwards. So 5 is missing. Later on in the film, we know why it's missing, in that Mark Strong's character has taken her notes because he's trying to copy her, he's trying to mimic her and discover her secrets and how she goes about things. But I think the significance of that loss of that symphony it is quite relevant to the character, because she mentions that she believed the fifth was about love, deep, unrequited love, and it's missing. And I mean, that's pretty much the theme right there. She can't form attachments. She doesn't have any love herself. Her sense of love and her sense of connection is through lust, is through, wild sexual escapades with multiple partners, probably. Not knocking that if that's your thing, it's all good. But I think that's what the theme of the film is, that she's so disconnected from people and relationships in this pursuit for this godlike career that she's built for herself, this very wealthy career, this globe-trotting career as well, because she's all over the place with the line of work that she does. She doesn't have any love. She can't form any significant bond with another human being, and apart from her daughter, maybe. And that's it. That's the theme right there. I could end this review right there. That the film is about her loss of love and what she interprets love to be. And her interpretation doesn't match up with what she believes it is. Because ultimately, Mahler, you could argue that it may have been about love, the Fifth Symphony. You could argue maybe it was about his new wife. But whenever you discover a new love or a new partner, there is an element of lust in there, isn't there? At least initially, that's how she views things. She sees that as a form of love, but it lacks the depth and it lacks the complexity of what she believes it does. And there's a beautiful realization of that, also including the number 5, which is very significant. And when she's completely, lambasted all over the media, and she's essentially just cast out from the conducting and the music world and the public limelight, she travels to Asia, and she just kind of goes here to find her roots and just tap into where she started. But she goes back to basics, essentially. She goes back to where it all started. And she goes to the hotel room and she asks for a masseuse to work things out. And she goes there, and it's one of those massage parlors where you get to pick the one who massages you, and they're all numbered. And when she stands there, and the lady at the front desk says, pick your girl, it reminds me of Rush Hour 2, actually, with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, which is a great movie, Rush Hour 2. And she says, pick which girl you want. And she stood almost like a conductor again at the front of this, which she's looking at all these women that are almost formed in a semicircle kind of thing, like the orchestra is. And she sees the girl number 5, and number 5 locks eyes with her. And it's that significance with that number right there, and that she has her epiphany. And the scenes followed right after with Tar running into the streets and vomiting, because that is her moment of realization as to who she is and what she's done. Also, you could maybe argue that the placement of number 5 in that massage parlor is in almost exactly the same position that the cellist that she took a liking to and was infatuated by and was trying to push to the upper ranks. When she picks a song that specifically has the same cello solo as the one that this new young bit of stuff, this new young Russian cellist has performed before, and she purposely picks that song because she wants her to be her star cellist, to be her solo cellist, despite the fact that there's a cellist there already who's served there way longer in this orchestra and has absolutely earned that place for that solo. But she's very manipulative. So people all know what she's trying to do, and that she's playing politics, and she's picking a favorite, but she does put it to a vote, and people all vote for it. And she does put it to auditions, and she does let only 2 people audition for it, and they hear both of them out. And the Russian cellist was technically the better player and played the piece better than the 2 of them. So she's very cunning. She's very deceitful in that way. But I think the placement in the orchestra pit of where this cellist was is exactly the same as the orientation of where this masseuse was in the number 5. And that kind of takes me on to the end of the film. Oh, hang on. No, it doesn't. No, sorry. I want to talk about the significance of the neighbor. There's a lot of psychological horror elements to this film, as I mentioned before. And one of them is this bizarre scene where, Tar's living in this rather wealthy apartment, this grand piano in there, bookcases, beautifully furnished, wonderful, everything like that. They're wealthy. They're wealthy. But right across from that apartment, to my understanding, I think it's that same apartment, right across from that apartment is this aging, frail woman and her daughter who's trying to look after her. And it's just dirty, and it's filthy, and it's filled, it's absolute squalor, essentially. Horrible conditions, and this daughter's trying to care for her mother, and she's fallen out of bed or fallen out of a wheelchair, and she's naked and she's dirty, and she asks for Tar to help pick her mom up and put her back in the chair, and she does, and it's followed immediately after with Cate Blanchett having a wash in the sink, like almost trying to wash the filth of poverty off herself in a way. It kind of reminds me of actually another one that I think this would be a beautiful companion piece for is American Psycho. A lot of similar elements to it, I think, like that. There's the bit where Patrick Bateman, different scenario, but he's revulsed by poverty and like homelessness. And you know, there's the bit where he approaches the homeless guy in the street. If anyone's seen American Psycho, you know the scene that I'm talking about. And he offers to give money to this homeless guy, and the homeless man's like very thankful. He's, oh, you're a kind man, you're a kind man. And you know, he touches Patrick Bateman. He's like, don't touch me. And he's like absolutely repulsed by this lower class person who's in front of him. And it strikes me as that, because, you know, she's completely naked and she's trying to, it's like a Lady Macbeth kind of thing. She's trying to wash the blood off her hand. She's trying to wash the grime and filth of poverty off herself, which is very telling for when later on she goes back to her apartment that she, her home, her childhood home, with all of her old pictures and her old cassettes of conductors and everything, where she clearly got the passion for it. She's got like her hockey medallions and stuff, because she was probably very into her sports as well, which we see throughout the film. She's jogging, you know, she does boxing and things like that. And yeah, I believe that the aging mother and the daughter trying to look after her in complete poverty is the life that she could have had she not chased after a dream and let it all go. She basically turned her back on her family, didn't have contact with them, forged a life of fame and fortune, and disregarded, you know, turned her back on relationships, familial relationships, romantic relationships, because she is very self-centered in the pursuit of greatness. Now, she did achieve greatness, and this is the thing, you know, the artist, sometimes people who achieve great things have had to make the strongest sacrifices. I sound like Thanos now, don't I? But in that moment, that hits back to reality. She very much is very much humbled by the end of this film, through everything that happens and how everything comes crashing down. You know, they say that it takes ages to get to the top, but when you're up there, you can just crash and burn so hard from the top. And that's exactly what she does during the course of the film. And that's actually a really poignant scene as well, when she goes back to her childhood home, because she does regress into this very childlike state. She's wearing her hockey medallion that she had as a kid. She's watching all these old videos that she probably grew up with. And, you know, she's having that outpour of emotion. She's finally getting in touch with her emotions. She's been this a very emotionally cut off person. And in that moment, that's where she starts to reach that epiphany as to who she is and what she's become. But I believe that that's the significance of, and obviously the mother, we see that scene where they carry the dead mom down on a stretcher. And it's implied, I guess, that Tar's mum has probably passed away as well, and she hasn't been there for her mother. And there's a lot of elements to do with that as well. And then that comes on to the ending as well. At first, the ending was very bizarre to me, and I had to think about this on the drive. And as I mentioned, there are so many signifiers. There's probably hundreds that I haven't mentioned, but it's all very what's the word I'm looking for? I'm completely zonked, guys. I do apologize. It's completely intentional by Todd Field, the director and the writer. We get to the ending. This is after she's, you know, she's turned her back on the classical world, because, you know, she's been all these sexual abuse allegations, and everything all comes to light, and all of her life as she knows it comes crashing down. She goes to Asia and she gets a conducting gig, and the film's like building it up, like, you know, she's back as a conductor, and she's going to deliver this very, you know, powerful performance and everything like that. She's standing behind stage and she's getting antsy and she's getting agitated. She's having to take a pill. We see her having to do this at the beginning of the film as well. This is how seriously she takes her job and what she does in her professional career. And she's all suited and booted, and she makes her way to the front, and the crowd applaud her. And you believe she's about to give this really impactful classical music performance as she has done throughout the rest of the film. And then the screen comes down, she gets a headset, and she's playing to a screen. And as the camera dollies back and pans across the audience, it's some kind of fan convention. I think it's for Monster Hunter. I think I saw in the credits, the video game. And it's like this, this JRPG music of the video game Comic-Con kind of convention. And it's complete juxtaposition from the life that we've seen and the kind of audiences that she was playing to at the beginning of the film. However, nonetheless, and I'm not poo-pooing that kind of music. I love video game music, and it's just as complex as any kind of classical music piece, in my opinion. And she sees that too. The video that she watched beforehand is that music can make people feel an emotion, and you can't always put words to what that emotion is. And if these people are going to this fan convention and they love that music and they love that video game, that means something to them. And any piece of music can tell a story. It's what she brings to it. And she goes out there with her head held high, knowing that this job is probably beneath her compared to stuff that she's done before. She is completely humbled, but she maintains her professional integrity in that moment. And you can see that she is treating that job, that gig, just as seriously as she would one of her other gigs that she's done, one of her numerous accomplishments. And that's what makes the character so fascinating, that, yeah, you could argue maybe she did deserve everything that came to her throughout the events of the film. But she's still, her one true love is music. And that is, she's finally in tune with it at the end. There are other elements I could talk about as well throughout the film, the various psychological aspects to the film, where her visions, what she hears, she's hearing metronomes go off at nighttime. There's a very, very unnerving scene where she's out on a jog and she hears this horrible scream coming from this forest that she runs into. It's like a woman's being attacked or murdered or probably raped or something. And she hears this echo of this scream. Now, I interpreted this. This was my interpretation of the film. I can't remember if this... I believe that this scene's after. When she goes to the orchestra pit, she talks about the trumpets and how she wants to hear the sound of the trumpet echo almost like it's from far away. And I extrapolated that she wanted that sound of that trumpet to mirror the scream of that woman echoing in the distance somewhere from afar. That's how I interpreted that. I might be way off base on that, and it's definitely a film I need to watch again. And then the film's also juxtaposed at the very end with a song that's completely tonally clashes with the music that we've had throughout the film up until that point. Throughout the film, we've had classical music in abundance, and it ends with like this Euro pop dance beat kind of thing. Very bizarre and very strange, but I think that's just to highlight how everything we know has completely changed for this character, and the world she now finds herself in is almost completely different. The end credits of the film are kind of at the beginning a little bit as well. It does take a while to get into, and this vocal song that goes on for quite a while. I probably need to give the film another watch to understand the significance of that song and its placement at the beginning of the film, because, as I say, this is a very deliberate film on Todd Field's part. I absolutely adored this film, and the more I think about it now, and the more of these themes and elements to the films that I'm picking up, I think this is absolutely a masterpiece, and I definitely want to watch this again. I can't remember all of the nominees for the Best Actress category this year, but I think that Cate Blanchett has a damn fine shot at getting it this year. I can't really comment on all of them because I haven't seen all of their performances, and I think it'd be wrong for me to just say, oh, Cate Blanchett deserves it when I haven't seen all of the other performances. But I definitely think she's a strong name this year to take it, 100%. Fantastic direction across the board. The music as well. I don't know how much music was... so Hilda... I've got to try and pronounce this name now. I was watching interviews with her earlier to try and get her name right. Hilda Gudnadottir. I think that's how you pronounce it. Gudnadottir. Oh God, Icelandic. I believe she's Icelandic from that. Yeah, Icelandic. She's got the the letters, like the Nordic letters in there. Let me just check the music real quick. So, a concept album was released featuring Gothna Datir's score from the London Contemporary Orchestra. Okay, so it's a mix. Yeah, it's a mix of two, obviously regular classical music and then some music from her as well. So yeah, the music's absolutely second to none in there, and then a very, very perplexing dance beat at the end, which, as I mentioned, is done intentionally at the end of the film. It's wonderful. It's such a layered film. I think it's going to be a film that's absolutely rife for analysis. And as I mentioned, there's probably many things that I haven't picked up on and will benefit from multiple viewings to understand the certain significance of things. But I think I've probably picked up on the main ones that I can think about. But I absolutely love this film. It's a film unlike anything I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a straight run-of-the-mill biopic on a conductor, a real-life conductor. I was totally off base with that, and it's a fictional one, and the themes and the elements of the story didn't go the places that I thought it would at all. But it's wonderful. It's wonderful. This, so far, I still haven't seen all the Best Picture films. I have a few left to watch. This is probably my favorite this year for Best Picture, but we'll see what happens, won't we? I've talked way longer than I thought I would, and a lot of this is probably just random verbose rambling, so I do apologize. If you've made it this far, congratulations. And if you've made it this far and enjoyed my review, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more reviews, discussions, live streams, everything in between. These videos are going to be coming thick and fast because I am desperately trying to watch all of these films before March the 13th. I still have time. A lot of things coming to the channel this week. This Wednesday, Mandalorian Season 3 starts back up, so I will be back to weekly reviews on Mandalorian. And this Friday, we have Creed 3. I'm a massive fan of the Rocky franchise and the previous two Creed films, and I'm cautiously optimistic for Creed 3. But I will be at that Friday night and can hopefully get a review to you guys that night as well. And it'll be a film that I'm very much looking forward to talking about. Give me a follow on Twitter as well, so you can find out all the times that I go live. I always announce on there when you can expect to see me. That's at Hobbit Fan Editor. And indeed, if you have seen Tar, please do let me know your thoughts on the film. Let me know some of your analysis on the film, some of the themes, some of the things that you took away from this film, and if you connected with the film as much as I did. Thank you very much for everyone that's tuned in, and I will catch you guys on the next stream. Take care, everyone.